So when you log in this morning at the Wabtec Rail XLWraps.com site, you'll see that we have an additional tab, and this is to handle HST arising work. So if we click into there, we can see here I've put on one of the 3 HST contracts just to get your verification that the approach is sound and get your endorsement. Then we'll put the other 2 projects on. The way it's working at the moment is we've got a button here to create arising work wraps, and we've got a button here that's going to review all the arising work wraps that we've created and how they're handled. So let's imagine we're working on the shop floor, and we'll come here and we're going to, the first rake is called SB1. I guess that's a special because there's only 2 cars on it. On a normal rake there'll be 4. But let's have a look at what SB1 looks like and how we actually raise an arising work form. Well, as you can see, SB1 is indeed just 2 cars, and these 3rd and 4th columns are not used at all because there's only 2 cars in this rake. Now we can raise arising work in 4 sections. So, and this has come from Brush Traction. This is how Brush Traction work. They have an interworks test, so this is about receiving the vehicle. They'll do some tests and they will raise arising work resulting from that. Or they have an interworks inspection on which they can raise arising work using this plus button. Or during production they may come across some arising work and they'll add to that there. And then there's the final test before the car returns back to service. They could get additional arising work from there as well. So let's just imagine that the car's just come in and we're going to raise an arising work wrap. So if I click into here, this is going to it's going to tell me, first of all, it's saying that an instance of this AAW form with this unique key combination, and you can see in here we've got a unit number and a car number. We've also got a couple of numbers here, which is a matrix number and a job ID. Now when we come to put in the core work onto the HST jobs, then that will become more relevant, but it probably makes sense to you that you can go and find a piece of additional work belonging to rake SP1 on the car 44079. It's saying it doesn't exist, you want to create it, you just go OK to that. So what the system's doing now is producing the first arising work form that's been attached to this car. And in fact we can see this arising work ID, it's number 1 here, so it's the first piece of work. We can create new ones at any time by using this plus button here, and that will create arising work ID number 2, number 3, number 4, etc. So let's just have a look at the layout of the form. What we have here is we've got an area in which to describe the arising work. This is an area for the project team to decide how they're going to handle this piece of arising work. If the job goes through to produces work on the shop floor, then the shop floor will put down their time and materials that have been consumed sorting out that arising work. And if the client approval is required, then the client can use this area here as well. The way it works is that when you log in, you will have certain credentials. So the client has certain credentials, and it means that he's the only person that can edit this tab. Production people are the only people that can edit this tab. Project team people are the only people that can edit this tab. And the additional arising work, the only person that can edit that is the owner, the person that created the form. So let's go on and add a description. So okay, first arising work problem or issue. So we can put down our a title for the work. And we can also add some detailed comments if we want to. So if I click into here, we get an area to add some more detailed comments, or in fact more often than not we might want to upload a photo, because a picture obviously gives a very good description of what the problem is. And this description will then be signed off by the owner. So I could sign that off now actually. So I'm logged in as the crash test dummy, so I'm just going to sign that off. And that's given a date and a time to when the problem has been raised. Now the next person to get hold of the problem is the project team, but we'll come on to that a little bit later. Let's just go back and see what happens now back to our little map here. You can see how this always shows the last number. So if we had 5 forms, that would be showing 5, but in fact we've only got 1 now. And as I say, if you want to create number 2, you'd have to click into number 1, load it up, and using the plus button at the bottom of the form, when it appears down here, you would create another piece of work. So that's a new wrap instance. So that's how we create the second form. So, and we can create as many as we like. We can go forever. So that's how we're going to generate the additional rising work forms. And if I just jump back again, we'll come back to this page here. And if we go onto the project management page now, what we can see is a summary, if you like, of all the work that we've done. So first of all, it says how many have we raised so far on this unit SP1. Well, we've only raised 1, and in fact if we press this button here, we could, well, let's do it, we'll be able to see all the additional arising work. So we actually get a list now, and it's telling us a few things, telling us what the title is, and it's telling us a project status. So it's actually saying project review select. So basically this is saying, project guys, this is a new problem, you need to get onto it. So that's in fact what would happen. So let's go back into there, and if I'm now, imagine I'm a member of the project team, I will have to make a few decisions. So the decisions I will have to make is whether it's safety critical, or whether it's going to inhibit other work. I'll say no, or maybe yes, I'll place it. And whether it's going to inhibit the final test. Let's say no there. And then I've got to decide what I'm going to do with it. So I can say, I'll tell you what, we're not going to do this work, so we can decide not to do the work. So we can close on project review. Or we could say, should we ask the client if he wants us to do it, because we could do it. So we can generate a request to the client, or we can say they'll definitely want to do this, so we'll put it straight into production. Or we'll send it straight to the test shop as well. So we've got 4 places where we can send the work really. So this is how we handle it. And then what we'd have to do is sign off as the project engineer, and the production people would then fill in their parts of the form, and the client may have to give his response too. So that's how the system works really. So it's saying I've made some changes. I'll stay on the page and I'll just submit that. If you're going to make changes, you've got to submit it, and that's updated the database now. So I'll jump back, and we can see here that I didn't sign the project review, so it's still saying the project review is required. You have to sign things off to make things happen on the system. So going back to here, we can now see that we've got lots of other reports here. So show me all the safety critical jobs, show me all the jobs that are going to inhibit the final test, show me how many are in for project review. So we know that there's 1 that is in for project review. How many are we can ask questions of the client. We might be waiting for a client response. At the moment we're not. How many are in production, how many are production complete, how many have been released to test, how many of those are complete, and then these are when it comes to the client, there are 2 clients really. There's the Roscoe, which is First Rail Holdings, and then we've got the TOC as well, because what might happen is a Roscoe might refer to the TOC and say, do you want this additional work sorting whilst it's been found? And then finally, when all the work is done on this unit, and we may get hundreds of arising work issues, certainly at Brush Traction they get hundreds, then we release the PQI report, which basically says this is the arising work that has been found, this is what we were instructed to do, this is how we know that it's fit to run, and these other ones here give a bill. So that's how we kind of keep everything in the one place. So all the project management buttons are all on here, and they produce lots of information. The other thing I need to tell you about is how you manage users. So all the HST users are put into a work group, their own work group, and they can be managed from one place. So in fact at the moment there's only 2 people in that work group. There's Andy Sloan and there's Crash Test Dummy, which is me, and I use the Crash Test Dummy account just to make sure that it's all working for Andy really. But Andy and the Crash Test Dummy have actually got the same priorities. Andy is the person that can add and create new users. So let's go through the process of adding a new user. To add a new user, we will have to give a username, so maybe Fred Blogs, and the email. Well, you don't necessarily have to use an email because not everybody in the company has an email, so you can just leave that blank if you wish. You will have to set a password. I tend to use a simple password to start with, because when the user first logs in, he will have to actually reset his password. That'll be the first job he has to do, because everybody's password is has to be a secret to them, because it actually produces a signature, and we can't have people generating other people's signatures. So we take passwords very seriously. So when I'm setting it up, I'll put a simple one in, and I will tell the user what his password is. He'll be instructed to change it. So we'd have to confirm that password here. We'd have to give him a first name, last name, a nickname. A nickname is just his initials typically, and it's just a shortened form, so that when we get signatures, we just see the initials, and we get the full details when we hover over them. Company and location is the other one. And now roles is the next thing that we ought to do. So everybody's going to be a user, so everybody needs to, if you're not a user, you won't get access to the system, so everybody's going to be a user. Everybody probably on the staff as well. You may be a supervisor, you may be a manager. You may be in the project team, you may be in the material control team, or you may be the client. So if client roles also have to log into the system, and so the clients will typically have a user credential and a client credential, and that's all they have. Now the CES and CNO again has come from Brush Traction, because they have people that are being assessed as competent and those that are not assessed as competent. And what happens is that these guys here can work with people with their competent assessment up to date, but it's generally the person who's within competence who actually signs the job off. So I've kept the system exactly the same. So you guys can make of it what you will. We've also, the system's very flexible, so we can create roles that actually make more sense to you. And likewise, when it comes to the categories as well, let's go back to these categories here. If we want to set this up with different categories, it varies. If these aren't appropriate to your work process, then we can change these very easily as well. So it's up there for people to play around with, and I suggest at this stage just play around with it, do what create anything you like, and I can always clean that data up. But it's something for you to play with and to get back to me with any feedback. So I'm looking forward to receiving that. So thanks for listening.